Hello, everyone. I just wanted to greet everyone and thank everyone for coming out to our April 2025 Lunch and Learn. This is something that we have done since we had our first housing summit in October of 2023. And between the housing summits, we've done these about once a month during the academic calendar as a way to keep the conversation going and to have conversations about everything that we couldn't fit into a 2-day conference. So we're just asking people to come out, have lunch with us. We definitely want this to be a community conversation. So a lot of our Saw Housing colleagues are here and helping to put this event on. And today I'm Chris. I work at the Community Foundation of the Central Blue Ridge, and I'll be your moderator. And then Dan, who is the CEO of the Community Foundation. Oh, excuse me, Anna Levitt, who is the Director of Community Action Partnership, State Augusta Waynesboro Capsol, will do the Q&A. So we'll definitely make time to get your questions in. So as thoughts come up, please we'll make time to make sure we get to all of your questions. Again, we want to say thank you for coming out. I'm going to have a seat. This panel is going to introduce themselves, then we're going to start asking them some questions, and then at some point we will switch to where we field your questions. So thank you very much. Mr. Collins, we'll start with you and go straight down.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nate Collins. I'm the Executive Director of Student Services for St. City Schools.
I'm Ryan Barber. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Waynesboro Public Schools.
I'm Jonathan Steck. I'm a school social worker at Waynesboro High School in Winona.
Hi, I'm Ashley Weitzel, and I'm a school social worker with Augusta County Public Schools, but I'm also the homeless liaison for the county.
Sarah Wygant, school social worker with Waynesboro Public Schools. I serve King Collins Middle School, Berkeley Glen Elementary, and Wayne Hills Preschool.
Very good. All right, so great. Question number one, and anyone is free to ask and anyone is free to add value to any question that you feel like you want to speak to. Don't feel like you have to speak to those. But the first question is, a federal law was passed in 1987 called the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. Can you provide a brief summary of what this law covers and how it informs the work that your school systems do in this area?
Well, it is like school.
It is like, starts off serious.
So the McKinney-Vento Act is a bipartisan piece of legislation that was signed when Ronald Reagan was president. It provides for immediate enrollment of students who are experiencing homelessness. It provides transportation to their school of origin. So for example, if one of Ashley's students was experiencing homelessness, the student and that family have choices remaining within reason in the school in Augusta County. But if they had a home in Waynesboro, we could also get them to the school in Waynesboro. The family has choices about where they're going to enroll. Also, because you know that sometimes folks experiencing homelessness don't have all of the appropriate documentation for school enrollment, there is great latitude with immunizations and leases and enrollment paperwork that you would normally have to have upon enrollment. What these amazing school social workers do is then work with the family to fill in the blanks with those records. But it really provides stability for the family when they're going through a really difficult time when they've lost their home. The definition of homelessness is a lot different underneath the McKinney-Vento Act. It's different than the HUD definition. So you are a student who's experiencing homelessness when you have lost your residence where you want to be for a variety of different reasons, and you're doubled up with another family member or somebody who's friends of your family. You're doubling up, and you don't choose to do that. We do have some families who choose to do that. You're living in a shelter, and we have great shelter partners in our community. You're unsheltered. You're living in a car or under a bridge or in a tent. Or you're living in a hotel or a motel. All of those those different groups fall underneath the category of experiencing homelessness. So just because you have a roof over your head, you still may qualify under the McKinney-Vento definition.
Legally, McKinney-Vento, oh gosh.
Sorry.
No worries. Legally, McKinney-Vento says a student is home if their primary nighttime residence is fixed, regular, and adequate. Fixed meaning in one place, regular meaning it can't be taken away from them on short notice, and adequate meaning utilities, appropriate space for the number of family members living there, those kinds of things.
So, and for those of you who know, I work at the Community Foundation. Community is huge to me. But having grown up here, sometimes you'll just walk into a room and the gentleman who comes and does the IT, we grew up together, and when we played Little League baseball, like everybody was scared to pitch to Tommy Humphreys right there. He would hit everything out the ballpark all the time. So question 2, in terms of housing insecurity and homelessness, is there an anecdotal story that you can share that highlights the barriers schools face trying to navigate to ensure each student has access to a quality education?
This one's kind of a softball question that I really like, that not so technical. So I have a set of twins at the high school, and this has been a really rough year for them. I've been getting to know them. They've been experiencing housing insecurity and then becoming homeless here in the Waynesboro area. And just having students that you kind of know that they're going through a whole lot, some of them are able to express that to a trusted adult and some aren't. So one of the twins would prefer to keep her business away from me and not share that. One of the twins has my work email address, and I just started getting bombarded with things like, hey, I don't know where I'm gonna be. What I need you to do is send an email to my teachers. Here's what I want you to share with my teachers so my teachers know my scenario. And I was like, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to help. We're trying to set up transportation, and I'll give thanks to Sarah, who met a lovely company and pitched them to Dr. Barber, and thanks to Dr. Barber that we can use them to pay for transportation. It's one of the huge barriers is getting transportation set up. So this young family is getting doubled up with a family in Crozet. And getting transportation set up can sometimes take a couple of weeks. So the student was very upset about that. I was getting emails during the school day and at night, like, Mr. Steck, what are you doing? Do you have the transportation set up? Will they be here tomorrow? And just really advocating to get her needs met. We were able to set up that transportation. She has come back to school, is just doing fabulous, has all of her grades up. But I mean, she'll come in my office and she's like, I like you, but I'm not super comfortable talking about this, but I need feminine hygiene products. I need a list of things, and I'm able to help. We have a care closet and do some of those things, connect her with the school nurse if she feels more comfortable with the school nurse. But just so many of those things that we can remove those from what a kid has to deal with coming in from 8:20 to 3:30. You don't want to be having to figure out these issues and deal with that on top of going to your geometry class or whatever it is. So I think it's a good story for me because this student is so on top of what she needs. And then just her twin sister, I really have to needle and make sure those needs are being met. But we have just a huge variety of needs for students. And I think it's kind of amazing what the school system is able to do with the help of everyone in the school system and what we can provide. But I think one of those barriers is finding out what students need and figuring out how to meet those. But let someone else speak on that.
So I had an opportunity recently, and I shared this story at the state conference level. So in working with a young man who was leaving a domestic violence situation with his parent, he had been participating in Valley Vo-Tech in a program there, doing welding, doing really well. And got the opportunity, was invited to participate in an additional class in which he would get a certification. It was a special invitation that they don't offer to every student that they serve. And so the social worker came to me and said, I don't know how we're gonna get this done. Like, he doesn't have the money, the class costs money, he's gotta get some additional equipment, he's gotta get steel-toed boots, an apron. And so I said, let me work on it. I started reaching out, trying to get, the items that we might already have within the school setting. It turns out we did not have items that we could use. And so what I did was use our monies to be able to pay for the class, to get him the materials that he needed to do the class. And he is about to finish that with an additional certification, which he plans to go straight out into the workforce. And it would not have been possible without this act.
At the middle school, I have a student who visits my food pantry at the end of every day. I've decided to not necessarily always put super healthy foods because that's what they get. That's what their SNAP benefits pay for. And those aren't the cool, fun snacks that middle schoolers really want to have. So I have Takis in there and things that he can eat either on the bus or on his ride home. And he takes advantage of that, and I wouldn't be able to do that without some of the funding. And it just makes his middle school experience just a little bit more common, because he's living in, he was living in a shelter with his mom. They've since transitioned out. But in that shelter setting, they had like a shared kitchen space, right? So he didn't have his own kitchen space, and if he brought snacks, sometimes the other kids would take it. And so he kind of got to have a little bit of normalcy as a middle schooler.
Red Takis or blue Takis?
The blue one, not like Fuego. He's those ones no, it's the blue Takis, and I told him my daughter loves blue Takis, so we bonded over that. But he has not touched the red ones at all, so I have to just keep going back to Kroger with blue Takis.
I'm going to go a slightly different direction. So, I think we all do a pretty great job of using resources available to us just to maintain educational stability for students experiencing homelessness. But I'm sure we all have the ones that we just can't quite get to that stick with us. So when this question was posed to me, what came to my mind are two brothers that we've had in Staunton City schools who have been experiencing chronic homelessness for about 3 years. And they tend to move from one motel to another with their parents, both of whom work, by the way, but they cannot get into stable housing for various reasons. And so the older brother was a high school age student, and we spent a lot of time with the family, a lot of time with him, trying to help him finish school. One of the scenes that plays across my mind, we work with various organizations and companies who write Christmas presents, and I remember taking Christmas presents to this family in the lobby of a motel, and that was their Christmas. So this is my vision of this family and trying everything we can to help them. But if you can imagine two adults and two tween-age brothers living in a hotel room, that starts to get really uncomfortable for probably everybody, frankly. And the oldest brother, when he was 17, decided he could not be that burden to his parents. He felt he was making life awkward for them. He felt he needed to contribute to the family, and so he chose to move out. And he ended up in a very unsafe housing situation with an adult he did not know. He was unaccompanied at that point, and he was doing these things to try to help his family. But in the end, he put himself in such danger, and in the end, we lost him. Right? We did everything we could to keep him enrolled in school, keep him engaged, and he just was at that survival level, and school just was not something for him. So what I hope you take from that is that we have some resources available to us as schools, but the impact of homelessness on developing human beings is tremendous, and there are some barriers we can't overcome. We can't do it as schools alone. It really takes the community working to support these families with what they're dealing with.
So you had brought up the idea of resources. What resources do your school districts have in place to support students experiencing homelessness, and where are the most critical gaps that need to be addressed?
So we receive funding from Project Hope, which is the state organization that manages the homeless grant funds that flow through the McKinney-Vento Act that I was talking about before. And the amount of money that the 3 school divisions get for that is about $45,000, and that's divided among the 3 different school divisions. So when you think about the need being so great, that's a pretty small amount of money to provide the resources that are needed. We are able to help with pretty much anything that a child would need to be able to access their education. So if they need shoes or clothes or glasses, they need a visit to the eye doctor, they need immunizations, those kinds of things that are going to enable them to be able to access the educational environment we have. We do have resources to provide those. That money, though, runs out. I know all of us have been in situations, we're coming to the end of a fiscal year, and I was asked questions about shoes and pants and things just the other day, and the response was, does the school level have funds to help? Is there a donation account that somebody's donated to that can help with that? Because the funding, it runs low, and what's sad is there are proposed cuts to this funding stream. And so the thought of getting even less money if the proposed cuts at the federal level are enacted, it can impact kids pretty significantly.
We also have available to us Title I set-aside funds, which are also federal funds, and we are required to use those to support students experiencing homelessness. Very small amount of money though, compared to the number of students we all serve. I don't know if that's to Waynesboro. I know we essentially fund most transportation costs locally. You know, we pay for the cost of transportation to get students from wherever they're staying to their school of origin. And so that's a big burden that we bear as local school districts. I think we're all the same.
Can you all talk, it might be helpful for folks to know, like the cost to get those twins from Crozet?
Yeah, so we're paying, it's a company that we contract with called Everdriven, and this family has actually, the two twins have decided they're going to stay at different places. So one is doubled up with a family member who has very strict rules to stay there, and the other one is still kind of going from hotel to hotel where they can stay. So just per day, we're spending about $250 per child to transport them. Because the transportation switches so often, we're short on drivers as a division. That's an area of need for, bus drivers, but having a driver that can go to Crozet or do that, I mean, we're looking, I think, with both kids, it ends up being like $250 a day. So it's a very expensive thing, but when at this Project Hope conference, there was a speaker who said, just because you have less doesn't mean you deserve less, and those kids deserve to get to school. It's just figuring out how you're going to make that work and pay for it.
Is it possible for the school, is there a barrier to them just finding some individual in the community who has the time, to go and give the kids a lift every day and pay them a fraction of that? So
one of the things that's hard, I think it's on the question list earlier, is that dignity and worth of the person. And just because you're going through that, we don't want you to have some sort of pull up to the school in a taxi cab or those things, which increases the stigma. So this transportation system is really nice because no one's even going to know that, I'm coming from here where, I'm homeless. Some of those other scenarios, it does put the child in a situation where it's embarrassing to be in front of your peers and to have that scenario. And we have so many well-intentioned community members and those things, but I think we kind of have to worry about the safety of the kids and the regularity of that ride and those concerns as well.
Yeah, Ashley.
Andrea,
I'm sorry.
So does this project Hope, is it federally or state funded or a combination?
There's federal funds that fund the Project Hope for the state, at the state level.
So with what's going on now, do you think that this will be funded next year, or is it a concern, or?
So there are proposed cuts. I actually had a meeting yesterday with a representative from Delegate Ben Klein's office about proposed cuts to the funding for homeless children and youth. And I don't know what those proposed cuts, what the impact Virginia would be. But any cut is going to be significant when you hear about these costs, and glasses aren't cheap, and those physicals and immunizations aren't cheap, and clothes and shoes and all of those things. All those costs add up for kids, but the costs that help take the burden away from families who are experiencing homelessness. So any reduction in cost, even if it's really small, in funding is significant.
I mean, I think we're also relying on local donations, private contributions, working with area businesses to provide some of those tangible things, the hygiene products, clothing, those kinds of things for our kids. So we're on a very thin margin already, so any reduction will be difficult to manage.
Andrea, I'm sorry, I know your name.
My sister's name Ashley, so I'll forgive you.
So in 2025, as people have started to bring in current events, we'll stay there, but what trends are you seeing in local schools regarding student transients due to housing insecurity?
I'll just offer, in Staunton, we've seen about a 50% increase in our students experiencing homelessness over the last 3 years. That population is increasing. McKinney-Vento requires annual identification. So for example, if we identify a student as a student experiencing homelessness, that identification is in place through the end of the school year. And then we go through the process again the next year. So I will tell you in Staunton this year, about 2/3 of our currently identified McKinney-Vento students are newly identified this year, which tells me that about 2/3 of ours from last year, we had a similar number last year, are no longer with us. So they've moved on to other places. And so I think it does contribute pretty significantly to the transience of our student population. Of students we've identified in Staunton City Schools this year as students experiencing homelessness, about 25% have left us, and about 75% are still with us.
And it's not uncommon for them to hop between the 3 localities and work pretty closely together when that happens, to try to coordinate transportation or whatever the need is, so that the student can continue to attend the school that they were in.
So just some numbers, Nate shared numbers from Staunton. 107 students right now are experiencing homelessness in Waynesboro. 63 of those students are doubled up with a relative or a friend of the family. 37, think about that. And I think about Nate's example, like being in a hotel for a few days is probably enough for me, but think about being in a hotel every day for months after month after month. 37 kids who are in Waynesboro are living in a local hotel or motel. And then what I will say also, some of the local motels, if you have a Waynesboro address, you're not eligible to stay at that hotel. The hotel is not meant to be a long-term residence. And so some of them have started to say, if your driver's license says Waynesboro, you aren't able to even stay at night. Yeah. So that's becoming a bigger issue. And then seven students are living in one of our local shelters.
To kind of piggyback on that about the hotel motels, another trend that we're seeing in our area that I hadn't seen in previous years is that if a family, some of the hotels are taking it more seriously than others, but if a family stays more than 30 days, then they now have tenant rights. And so if they stop paying, then the people that own the hotel have to go through the whole eviction process, which is really costly and time consuming. And so a lot of our hotels and motels here in the area are saying after 28 days, our families have to be out, and they have to be out for 24 hours. They can come back, but they have to be out for 24 hours before they can come back. And so what is happening there is I've got 2 brothers who are at a hotel that's doing that. They own a private day placement, so we're already transporting them to 2 different areas that are not local, so they're not in Waynesboro. And dad is just having to text me whenever he can, and text transportation when he figures out where they're going for that 24 hours to get the kids to school. And then when they get back, he's letting everybody know again. And it's just, these kids already have significant behavior concerns. They have a lot of medical diagnoses, and it compounds all of that's going on, that they can't stay consistently in one place.
Rick, you have a question?
I do. Referring to the Waynesboro address not being able to stay at a Waynesboro hotel. Who's behind that regulation? Is it state, city? Is it zoning? Is it
I believe
business
that's the
license?
hotel managers who are making that decision based on experiences they've had, because that's something new. When you said trends, that was something that's been new this year that we're getting pushback. Even when the school division is calling, like I've had to call ahead to a particular hotel and say, we're vouching for this family, can you please let them stay for 3 nights? They have a Waynesboro address, and like we have to get special exceptions. So there's not necessarily a state law or anything like that. It's just the hotel managers, probably for the reasons that Sarah described. They're not wanting people to be there for a long time.
And I think the other thing, there's just times where they're like, why do you want to be in a hotel if you got a house around the corner? And they're thinking like the most not noble of intentions, right? Like any reason you want to do this in my room instead of your room, it's probably not a good thing. I mean, that's what it is, right?
It's just a question.
Yes.
Do the hotels give the homeless a discount when they stay there?
I think it depends on the establishment. You know, some allow for longer term stays and some do not. I think it really depends.
Yeah, so, and the community of people experiencing homelessness know which ones do. Like, this would be common knowledge above, like, this gets communicated to them, but it depends on a level of trust, right? Like, if you've been there for 4 months and you paid every week, and they know, like, they're gonna start asking more questions, why are you here, what can we do to help? Right, but like, there has to be an established pattern of payment, but then you will see like, where they start to help, so.
So we try to have a relationship as best we can with some of our hotel operators. So that if they have families that show up with them that seem to have school-age children and those children don't seem to be going to school, we ask them to try to contact us and we'll go out and try to talk with the family and find out what's happening. Some are pretty good about it, some aren't.
Well, when I was a family service advocate with Head Start, I didn't know some of that about the hotel, so that's why I'm asking about that.
I will say, to reiterate, our numbers are similar to Waynesboro, it sounds like. About 2/3 of our students experiencing homelessness are doubled up. It's a smaller number in hotels. So I think we all spend a lot of time working with our families who are doubled up with others, friends or other family members as well.
That kind of leads into our next question, which I think is the one that you were thinking of. Homelessness can be invisible, and I imagine not every student is readily volunteering information about their housing situation. You touched on that too. How do you find out if a student may be facing some sort of housing insecurity situation? What's your initial point of contact?
So one of the things that I have really focused on over the last couple of years is training staff. Looking at those red flag markers that pop up when a student is either already enrolled with us or is new to the division. So one of the things that we talk about is you have a student who has been consistently attending, but then all of a sudden attendance kind of drops off. You're barely getting them 1 day a week, if that. Something is obviously happening. That should be our first red flag. What's going on with the student's attendance? Because very likely it has something to do with the home environment. One of the other things that we talk about is when students come into our locality and they don't have the documentation they need. That should also be a red flag. Oftentimes, you know, when you become homeless unexpectedly, it's an emergency type situation, bringing all that paperwork with you or even having access to that paperwork doesn't always happen. So that's got to be a red flag for people. We're training the registrars, we're training the front desk staff to kind of recognize those things. I've done trainings with transportation department, the bus drivers and the car drivers, because oftentimes a kiddo will just pop up at a bus stop that has never been there before. And it's because they're living with a family who is already riding that bus. That's also a flag. Like, hey, where did you come from, buddy? What's going on? And they just kind of get that very superficial initial information and then pass that on to the school social workers who make contact.
I think we do those things as well, and then once that point of contact is made, we also train our staff to have those conversations with students or family members very tactfully, very respectfully, so that to try to make them feel comfortable with sharing with us. It is not uncommon for families to not want to share their situation. They're embarrassed, of course, difficult to talk about. And so we work with our staff to help them have those conversations, or I'll go out, or one of my staff members will go out and have that conversation with the family.
I think I know oftentimes they'll just defer the families who, again, they get those red flags, and I think sometimes it is really hard for families to share that information with us, and I think just, making sure that they understand that there's no judgment, that we're all one disaster away from being in a situation similarly, and so there's I just want to help you, I want your kid here, and I think having those conversations allows them to open up, and then in a small community, like we have that word spreads, right? So they are like, the families talk, and they're like, well, they know the social workers in Waynesboro, and they know we all talk, and so they'll say, well, just, hey, Miss Sarah, can you tell Mr. Stick at the high school that this is what's going on, and they can pass our names around the community and our cards, and they know how to get in touch with us, and I think being a presence in the community is helpful. We're also based in our schools in Waynesboro, and that has been really helpful. So the registrar is down the hallway. She hears something that just doesn't sound right, she's right in my office saying, this just doesn't feel right, what do I need to do? And I think that's been really beneficial too in helping identify these families as well.
I think the other reality is some of these families don't realize that they're considered homeless under McKinney-Vento. And so sometimes it's helping them understand their situation and their rights under federal law. And that's a conversation I'm sure we all have to do.
What's great about the McKinney-Vento Act, because it's a federal law, every school division in the country is required to have a homeless liaison. So I received a call just recently from one of our high school administrators discussing how this family who had been experiencing homelessness now was in Virginia Beach experiencing homelessness. So I called up the liaison in Virginia Beach, gave details about the family so that they could reach out because they were really struggling to figure out how to get their child registered in Virginia Beach city schools. So there's a network of folks, and what I would say is great about our community is St. Augustine and Waynesboro schools work closely, to support families who, like Ashley said, are bouncing between the three school divisions.
Is there a difference in how this work looks when you're dealing with an elementary age kid compared to a middle school kid compared to a high school kid?
Yeah, very different. The high school kids, as you might expect, are much more resistant oftentimes to support. So I think about an example, we have one family currently staying in Charlottesville, homeless, and we work with the Blue Jerry Food Bank to provide food for families. And we try to send food in the transportation with the high school age sibling, and there are two younger siblings, and he refuses to take it with him. So we actually drive food over to Charlottesville separately from his transportation because he doesn't want to see anybody at school to see him getting in a van with a box of food. And so we're very sensitive to that as well. We respect that. So then we take the next step. So I feel, so we use federal census data to project how many students experiencing homelessness we would expect to have. We expect about 10% of our students who live below the federal poverty line would most likely be experiencing homelessness. And staying currently, we exceed that. But that gives us a number we're kind of looking for. I feel that we under-identify high school age students specifically because they don't want people to know what's going on. I think younger kids, it's a little bit easier to deal with. And I think often with younger kids, in my experience, their parents are much more cooperative because they're truly concerned about caring for those younger kids. The story I shared earlier, sometimes, teenagers, parents kind of let them go because they can't afford to keep helping them.
One of the things that I think I have realized over the last couple of years, we used to partner with like a coat program from Northern Virginia, and they would give us a variety of coat sizes, all the way down to 3T up to adult sizes, which was a great program. But what we were consistently finding was that when we offered these coats to middle schoolers and high schoolers, we weren't getting takers. Nobody wanted the coats. And it kind of led us to come back to the table and talk about that. And I attended a training recently, which really kind of gave me the push to do what I think I should have been doing all along, is looking at, I don't know if you guys have seen middle schoolers and high schoolers lately, but they're not big coat people. They are sweatshirt people all the way. Like they'll be wearing shorts and sweatshirts in 30-degree weather. So it really kind of gave me the push to say, okay, we need to be meeting them where they are. This is what they want. While we may want them to wear coats, it's just not a thing that's going to happen. And I think that's how we kind of bring them in. Let's meet them where they are. Let's give them what they want and make it so that they're not looking different than their peers. They're wearing the same things. They're looking the same way.
Me and my daughter have this fight a lot.
Yeah.
She says, Dad, like, we don't have lockers anymore.
Yeah.
So school's a lot different. Like, I can't just make her fit into what my experience was. Even though as a dad, you'd say, like, shouldn't you be more warm? I get it. So we've touched on this a little bit, but I want to dig just a little bit deeper. And we're wrapping up the list of questions, and I'll switch with Anna. She'll come up here and field your questions, and I'll go to the back. But how do you navigate the social concerns when students are at such a vulnerable time in terms of their peer relationships? And correlated to this, what can be done for students from a mental and emotional health standpoint?
So I think a lot of the kids, whether you're elementary, middle, or high, you have a trusted adult in your building, hopefully, and those conversations include a lot of these. Sometimes you're lucky enough to be that person, sometimes it's someone else, but usually if you're experiencing homelessness, Ashley already mentioned attendance issues, sometimes there's grade concerns, so there's a lot of things already that you're dealing with. So we're kind of trying to triage the whole person in the whole scenario and figure out referrals and supports and offer those all at the same time. So where you live is a big part of you, but it's just a piece of you. And lots of times it can lead to a lot of those other issues. We talked about, kids not wanting to have the stigma, not wanting to have other kids know that, they're homeless or have to take the box of food, those things. I do think we're getting better as a school division at recognizing those needs and figuring out a way. Like we have a clothing closet at the high school. I took a student there the other day and he was like, man, you guys got New Balances in here. Like I thought these were gonna be like all no-name things. And I'm like, no, we have there's a pair of Nike Blazers. I know you're a shoe kid, I'm a shoe guy. I'm like, yeah, there's a pair of Blazers. Like get those, man, those are awesome. So we are trying to support kids and make it things that kids want. And then we can connect the counseling resources and try and be creative. We have some kids that, we know transportation is an issue. They're not gonna be able to make it to counseling appointments, so we'll offer a private office during the day that they can do it virtually and have counseling appointments at the school. So we're really trying to be flexible and creative and meet those needs.
I would say that we have, in all three school divisions, but I can speak to Waynesboro specifically, increased the number of school counseling staff, school psychologists, school social workers. We have more folks who are focused on student mental health and wellness because we know that all of us experience the trauma of the pandemic, and some of these families are still in the midst of daily trauma. They don't know where they're going to sleep. They don't know where they're going to eat. And as one of my colleagues mentioned, these folks, I think Nate was mentioning, the parents are working. A lot of times we have to train our teachers because this particular family didn't come to the parent conference. Well, if they don't work all day long and all night long, they're not able to pay the rent at each of the month. They love their child, they care about them, they want the best for them. School is really important. They're just not able to do all of the things that we would hope as educators that we want them to do. And so just having a closed closet, having a food pantry, having professionals on staff so that we're available when they need them. And much like Nate was saying as well, we can't do this alone. Church partners, we have churches in the Waynesboro community who all during Lent donated food for food pantries and hygiene products. And we've been able to infuse our middle school and high school with those opportunities and those things that the churches do. We have people who will send us checks in the mail and just say, please make sure this goes to somebody who needs glasses or shoes or clothing. And so the community as a whole, when we ask them, if we expressly ask for something, the community always steps up.
As it should be.
Yeah.
How has the housing crisis impacted or affected teacher recruitment and retention in Staunton, Augusta, and Waynesboro? And are there initiatives in place or proposed solutions to address this challenge?
We're looking at you guys down at the end.
I just have to say, unfortunately for us in Staunton, we haven't had a tremendous impact on our staff recruitment. Now that said, we have some, we all have some very low paid employee classes. I think our lowest pay band in Staunton City Schools right now is $13.60 or so, right? We are very fortunate that we have families that are established here in our area who can work those jobs. If we were having to actively recruit for those jobs, it would certainly be a much bigger concern for us, I have to say.
I think that where we get into issues with teacher recruitment is sometimes we'll have teachers who want to come to the area and they don't feel like that they're able to meet the price point or the community demands or the inventory that they're wanting to purchase. I think Rick does a really good job of saying those 3-bedroom houses, like those are just hard to find, and a lot of teacher types are wanting to have, a 3-bedroom house, and so either they're priced out or they can't find it. Some of our brand new educators, so you may not know this, so they start working for the school divisions in the end of July. Their first paycheck is on August 31st. Okay, so think about that. If you're just finishing college and you're a lowly college student, you have no money, and then you've got to pay utilities and rent, 2 months rent, first and last, and all those connection fees for a place. There's many of our teachers who start out living in Airbnbs or hotels until they get a couple of paychecks and they can get on their feet to pay those fees.
One of the kids that I mentored, he ended up going to the same college I went to later, and he just got married a couple weekends ago. But he graduates college, first of his family to do it, and he goes to start doing all these things. And they're like, oh, you already have this, and the parents have been using his social security card, or his number. And so they're like, no, you already have debt with the cable company, you already have debt with this. And he's like, what is this? And the process to undo that is very messy as well.
So the spring semester is a time when we get a lot of our teacher interns. And I've noticed just kind of this trend over the last couple of years is that as we're getting JMU students and Mary Baldwin students, they're great students, but we're not keeping them in this area because they are having to return home for that very reason, to live with mom and dad for a while longer until they can get their feet under them, because they're not in a place where they can pay all of these things up front. And as we all know, housing costs right now are outrageous. I'm not sure that I could have purchased my first house at what things are right now. Certainly not.
One of the initiatives, what I would love our community to do, I've talked to the Planning Commission about this in Waynesboro, I would love for us to purchase an apartment complex and renovate it and subsidize housing for police, fire, and teachers, and provide an opportunity for folks who are just starting out to have a place where they're able to live in the community where they're serving for a short period of time till they can, much like Ashley said, till they can get on their feet and they can move out. And then we're able to keep people in our community. They go to our restaurants, they attend our events, and so it helps the community also. It's really great if a police officer or a firefighter or a teacher is living next door because the community is better as well.
I know Charlottesville, I was attending a couple of meetings to see how Charlottesville is addressing this issue. And they have some unique thoughts on how they can make it happen that they're trying to enact now.
If anybody has big bucks and wants to buy an apartment complex, we're all about it.
So I know a couple of our local media friends are in here, and I know I've learned this by error in the past when I was in journalism, but we always ask in the interview, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't? So as I transition this over to Anna and help so she can field your questions, we just wanted to give you a chance. We thought of the most thoughtful questions we could think of, but is there something that you couldn't give an answer to just because we didn't ask the right questions? And as you guys answer that, and we'll let you come and take over this.
I want to piggyback on something that you actually said, Chris. I think you're asking the right questions, and no offense to my fellow panel folks, I think we are the wrong people. I think we can give you some of the answers, but the families, in my experience, can teach you so much more, and just having some conversations, and I gave a list to a family, and the parent was like, Mr. Seg, this one's outdated, this is now here, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's changed already. And she's like, if you want the best stuff, you show up to this church at this time when their blessing box get restocked. So the families know, we're not the gatekeepers of knowledge. The families are experiencing it, they have that knowledge, and most of the time are willing to share and to help that out. And there is some community there where that information gets passed around. So I think those folks are able to share the barriers, what's helpful, what's not helpful, probably better than, at least I know, way better than what I'm able to share.
This doesn't work, so I'm saying.
Yeah, but it looks cool.
It's authority. It's a symbol of authority.
As somebody is trying to, or works or with the housing, or goes to city council meetings, as y'all, I came in late, so I don't know which divisions or cities that each of y'all in, but what would be one thing that you would ask of y'all's local government that they could do better in the area of unhoused or homelessness?
I think one of the things that I have seen, and I think that Nate's example was perfect, is that we have a lot of families that are double-up or in hotel motel, but both parents are working. And the issues that we've run into is that they have poor credit or they have an eviction notice on their record. And so then that is, you can't, it's really hard to overcome that and then find housing. And so if we could perhaps give people more grace, especially as we've all experienced this housing crisis, it's probably a good idea to kind of revamp our expectations of what families might have on their previous records coming into housing. And so that would be really helpful to be able to remove some of those barriers, because I have families that have the money. They are working at Target distribution, they're working at Walmart distribution, they are at Hershey, and so they make decent money and they show up every day, but they have these strikes against them, and so they're not able to obtain any housing. And so now they're stuck in a hotel motel and stuck in that loop.
And that is literally a loop they get stuck in, because I think on top of that is, the expectation that they have this money saved to give first month's rent, to give the deposit, and all of those things then are not available because they're just using their everyday money to survive, to have a place to go that night. So I feel like that is a huge barrier for families that we need to find a way to support them in that, because, and I feel like this is across the board, is we are not allowed to use any of our funds to support those kinds of problems, to support those kinds of barriers. We are not allowed to provide first month's rent or the deposit or application fees even. There was a pause on that. So it makes actually fixing the true issue a major barrier.
To piggyback on Ashley, there's some people whose water is turned off and they're evicted because their water is turned off or their lights are off, and they're evicted because of that. And the funding that we have does not allow for any help with those fees.
Is it the McKinney-Vento funds that can't be used for that, or could you use other school district funds for that?
We don't have a funding source for those kind of things. And also, that's a slippery slope. Like if we open up the door and we're paying everybody's water bill, we've got teachers to pay and other things that we need to do.
We typically partner with outside agencies to do like water cutoffs or electricity cutoffs, but yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, just a couple things. One is I've only lived here for 3 years, but I'm a retired teacher, so thank you for everything you're doing. And I've taught inner city. I know everything you're saying and then some. And I also want to address the rental thing. When we came here, we came down here because my husband grew up in Falls Church. Several of his friends had retired down here over the years, so we came here to retire. And we had a house to sell, we had money, we had great credit. It was so difficult to try and rent. It was so difficult that we actually bought before we anticipated to, because it was easier to buy than to rent. The applications are arduous. They sometimes they only last 30 to 60 days. They require anybody in the house has to have like $35 to $65 deposit just to put the application in for some of these management companies. Sometimes we would do all those things and they would still say, oh, sorry, we rented it, And it's hard to, we were just astounded. Where buying was pretty simple if we had, if you have a down payment and good credit, that we don't have a problem. So that addresses both your young people that are trying to go into education and also the people that have any marks on their credit at all. And I think I would like to hear having some idea of what sort of community foundation or organization that I could, learn more about and maybe help with that, because I do understand what these kids and their parents are going through. And just that I'm really, really worried because we're like $45,000 is like a drop in the bucket. And even with these personal things, it's like we can't rely just on food banks and churches that are trying to do things. We need to say a lot of this funding is probably going to disappear. We need creative emergency thinking, and I would be more than happy to be part of a coalition or initiative or whatever to help with that, just to get information out. That's it.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. We want to make sure to respect everyone's time, so we'll take a couple more questions here.
So you guys mentioned trusted adults and making sure that you're having conversations about who you can talk to about this situation. Much of my background and experience has been in anti-human trafficking efforts, and then the vulnerability that comes from this is astounding. And especially with high school students who in the nicest way don't want you guys as their trusted adults. And so they're looking to people online, people who are older, and you had mentioned the 17-year-old who went out and you don't know who these adults are. I understand it's a part of family life education now to be able to talk about these positive relationships and what is a good relationship, but are you guys also having those conversations about what a good relationship looks like and how to not get into the ones that can make them victims of human trafficking?
Yeah, I think our school counselors who serve a smaller subset of the population, they work really hard on having those healthy relationship conversations, right? It's starting at elementary school and middle and then into high school. Certainly if a student felt like they were super comfortable with me or with Mr. Steck, I would be more than happy to have that conversation. I'm not always that person, I recognize that, right? But I do think that, I think some of our teachers can have a good conversation about what a healthy relationship looks like. And I think those staff members, at least in Waynesboro, are the ones having those conversations.
Yeah, so we do. We fairly intentionally try to connect students to a trusted adult in school, and we usually ask them, who do you like to talk to?
Yeah.
And then we help those people. It's not always a counselor, it's not always an administrator. Oftentimes it is a teacher or a staff member. And then we help those staff members understand kind of their role and what the boundaries should be around their relationship with that student and what they need to report or disclose to a counselor.
I think it's also helpful. We've had other students who will say, I'm concerned about my friend's relationship with so-and-so to an adult, and that's a good gateway. So I think that education of what to look for, and then you might see, oh, actually, we learned about this, and I see a lot of those things in the relationship that my friend is having, and share. So that's been my experience more in the last year or two, is a friend will come and report a concern about, their friend in a relationship, and they've been very valid concerns and issues that we've addressed. So I think that at the high school seems to be more of the gateway, is a concerned friend making a report to an adult.
I take special care to when I'm doing an intake, either with a family or especially with an unaccompanied youth, because that's a child who is by themselves, right? To have that conversation about wherever they may be, if that situation ends up to feel unsafe, they're asking things of you that don't feel comfortable, that don't feel right, that you feel like you're being taken advantage of, don't worry about letting me know about that first. Figure it out, head somewhere else. Here, we had the conversation about here are some emergency shelters that can take you. If you end up hopping to another friend, that's okay too. You can tell me about that after the fact and we can figure it out. But don't keep yourself in that situation because you feel like it's what we've discussed and where we plan to transport you from. But there are places that we can figure out what happens in the meantime, but it's more important to have them in a safe situation.
Our schools are providing intentional instruction on human trafficking and looking for the warning signs of that, because that's a huge issue in this community.
Because New Creations came to you guys.
We have a
about
great,
that.
great
they're
partner,
great. Yeah.
great partner.
That's
Yep.
right.
Yeah, we use Child Safety Matters in the prevention project.
Sean, we have a lot more time left. I apologize.
Ask a question. Mary, did you have a question? Yeah, I was just thinking way back when I had kids in school, and when we lived here, one of my daughters was in 4th grade, and I was surprised that it's hard to make friends. It's hard. It had a bigger effect on her than I thought. And I think about these kids. I mean, how do they find friends, make friends in school? I mean, because it's just...
I'll answer your question, thinking about the kids that don't stay with us very long. Another family that I have in mind, a young couple, 3 young children, ages 3 to 6, I believe, and they appeared in one of our local motels, and so we went out and talked with them, got a resource to try to get enrolled in school. 3 days later, they're gone. And I think about not just social relationships with those children, but those kids are at a critical age to learn how to read, right?
Yes.
And so you think about that period of homelessness that maybe lasted even just a year or 2, and the impact on their development, whole child, right? Social skills, ability to read, academic gaps, all those things. Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important things of this, right? And that's why we want students, no matter where they're living, to stay with us, even if we're spending $250 a day, to bring them to us, because those social situations and those connections that they have within the schools, and the schools are so important because we see everybody. Everyone is mandated in the Commonwealth, right, to tell us what they're doing with school, whether or not they're home. But we are obligated to make sure that we know every single student that lives in our jurisdiction. And I think that that's why this law is so important. I think it's part of the reason it's in place, right, is to maintain those connections for kids and that consistency with adults and with peers. So that they are able to maintain those relationships, and so if we've got a kid that is in Lexington just for a short amount of time while the parent is incarcerated, we'll transport them back and forth because it's only going to be for 6 months, and we want to maintain those connections that they have instead of having them move around.
And have to rename them. Yeah.
Correct.
Anybody else?
Kind of a weird question, but what's the impact of the private schools having an effect on the public arena? And I guess where I'm going with that question is, I grew up in public school. My kids went to public school, and part of that was that I wanted to expose them to all socioeconomic levels. Quite frankly, I went to a ghetto school in Norfolk when my dad was stationed there. So how does that impact, now that we're seeing so many new private schools coming about?
So the private schools are great partners of school divisions, and we work with them well. Obviously, when a student enrolls in a private school, the funding does not come to the public schools, which would be a concern. But I feel like that we're in a growing community, and we haven't been at least Waynesboro has not been significantly impacted by declining enrollment. There is a tipping balance though, like if enrollment is going way down, that means we are able to hire less teachers, we're able to have less services and materials and supplies because the money comes with the students. And so if private schools started taking a significant number of our students, that would be an issue. We have not found that we are in competition with them. They've been really good partners. They actually use our resources for professional development, and we partner with them.
Well, that's exactly what you're asking. I do think an interesting trend has been the rise in like homeschooling and using digital programs and using that technology. A lot of kids in the pandemic actually found, hey, I'm really good at doing this online. I don't like all the drama and I don't want to be around people. I want to be just doing this online. And I've had a lot of students who will come and who report anxiety, social anxiety, those things, and really find a place online that works for them. Then again, I have those families that I might have attendance conversations with who do homeschool, and I'm like, ugh, I'm just not sure this is the greatest plan for you, but you've met the legal requirements, and I'm hoping that it goes well. But I think that's a trend that I'm seeing, especially at the high school level, is a increase in, I'm struggling socially or, with anxiety, and I would rather just do it online, and a lot more kids being enrolled in homeschool.
And there are some parameters there to like keep this thing, but that also could be if your family's struggling and you don't want to deal with the shame of having to get them in public school. Right. It's just to say like we're homeschooling, but then not do anything except try to survive.
That's an unfortunate truth. Yeah.
So you touched on this a little bit earlier about restrictions on how you can use certain public funds. In a perfect world, if there was a citizens were coming together, they wanted to do something good with their private philanthropy, what would be the best uses of that to complement the public funding?
Just the need is great. So like any of those sources to provide materials and supplies for kids so that they're able to access the learning environment. So we have families who reach out to us for clothing and shoes and glasses and physicals and whatever. And like I was saying before, the money dries up. So we do have, like I was saying, we have some people, private donors, who'll just send us a check in the mail saying, pay for clothes or shoes for a family in need. But yeah, if there's, some people with deep pockets, Stan. You want them to write us a check, we will gladly support our kids and families with that.
Yeah, you set yourself up for that one.
Dan, I think there are two things. I think one, and we touched on this earlier, short-term rental assistance is one. And two, the other thing we see, and we've talked about this much today, is access to health care. Right? That's often a barrier for these families as well. There is no health care to speak of. Kids come to us with no immunizations, no school entrance physicals. So to me, those are two bigger dollar items that we cannot help with easily that are create real gaps for us.
And there are some organizations, and the money went up, but who help pay for utilities and things, but they run out too. And one of the things I was surprised, because I'm a big fan of Augusta Health's mobile clinic. They do not take patients under 18. No. And I said, you've got to like get together with the pediatrician, whatever you need, because
I think the hero and the Secretary that you mentioned have been absolutely fabulous. And I mean, I came to Hero earlier this year with a sob story, quite literally. I think I was sobbing telling the story of this family because they're so important to me. And they were like, well, we're not sure that we can meet this need. And it was a really pressing need where they had finally identified an apartment, but we need that down payment check there today or they're not holding it. And, I had called and said, I'm going to guarantee you that you get this money. The landlord's like, no, you either have it right now or not. And I don't want to put anyone in snooze out there, but all of a sudden from Hero, somehow a few private checks showed up to me, meet me here in the parking lot, and I had, $350 to give from zero, which is absolutely fabulous. And I sent him the picture of the young lady holding the keys to her first apartment. And I mean, there's so many good people out there just figuring out how to get us on that same page. If we had some sort of clearinghouse and where, because I mean, if you'll ask a family, the family's like, oh, I already talked to that person. Yeah. And they're like, they know all the people. Oh, I already talked to Miss Deb. Oh, I already talked to Angie. Oh, I already talked to this person. And, they're all going to the few same people. But if we all kind of knew what was out there and where that pool came from, some sort of clearinghouse, I think would also be helpful.
I just had one question. So now that we're in the spring and summer is approaching, what happens to the kids? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes they're out of school. I know during kind of pandemic, they had where kids could come and get food or whatever. So does that program still happen, or like what kind of happens? You know what I mean? Like y'all do you know what I'm saying? Like does the school still provide stuff,
we work with Blue Ridge Area Food Bank, and we provide food boxes for extended school breaks. We'll do that a couple times this summer. I think Waynesboro and Staunton have a kind of a beginning of the year event we do that happens in July to try to reconnect, and often that doesn't serve just students experiencing homelessness, but they're part of that population. My office, I'll just speak for Staunton, we try to reach out to all our families who we know were experiencing homelessness this year over the summer to just try to say, check in, where are you, what do you need, those kinds of things. So we continue that work for the summer.
We try to identify those kids for summer school. We look at that list and compare them to the parameters that we've set for summer school, and then that way they're able to visit the food pantries that we have at the high school and middle school as well. So just keep an eye on them.
Our cafeterias are open for a summer feeding program, and we advertise the hours of that program so folks can get food. We do many of the things that Nate mentioned as well.
Okay. So the best way then is just to donate food items to the food bank, and they will distribute to you guys, or is there a certain type of schools that you can donate?
So in Staunton, we work with the food bank for division-wide, but each of our schools also has a weekend food backpack program during the school year, and those typically are churches that are providing those food items for each school.
Ours is, or at least mine at the middle school, is just private donations, just haphazardly put together by myself and Dr. Barber. We just kind of piecemeal, like we'll get a donation here, it'll go into my food pantry. And so I've been telling people that want to help with the food pantries that I would love those things, but it's easier. Now's not necessarily the time, right? As the month, we've got one more month of school left, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't want to leave some of those perishable items in my office all summer long. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes before winter break and right as school starts are the best time to restock that. I also carry hygiene items, and those can last year round. I have a box of diapers because you just never know. I'm trying to think of other items that I have.
Keep plugging actual places. Yeah. The River City Bread Basket is so fabulous and such a worthy organization. Yeah. They are definitely deserving of your help. The Green Hanger Project, Embrace, lots of those community places are doing fabulous things and figuring out how to meet needs. I've never heard anything bad about the River City Bread Basket and what they offer. There's a lot of client choice. You can get fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, like some really great stuff. It's not all just, mac and cheese. There's some really great options out there. You need the mac and cheese and the Takis, but
that's right.
There's also some good stuff too.
They have food for dogs too. I took a family there. It's amazing. I tell everybody about it. The people are kind and generous, and they don't make you feel like, they just make you feel welcome there. It's a really amazing thing. And Embrace is another really great place who just does all the things.
What's the Green Hanger Project?
So it gets closed. So it's another place where you can kind of have a secret kind of shopping experience where you can go.
It's inside of Embrace.
It's outside of Embrace.
But they're all together for us.
And Ashley, would you tell about the food thing, or not the food, the clothing thing that you all do as well?
Yes, so we do, we partner with the other two localities to do what is called the Saw-style clothing closet at the beginning of the year. We hold it at usually one of the Wilson complexes. This year it's going to be the middle school, and invite students from all around. As long as you are a school-age student, you're allowed to come shop for free. We collect shoes, we collect clothing, we guarantee new socks, new underwear for every student that comes. So we partner with a lot of agencies in the community. Sometimes we get money, sometimes we get donations. The churches, area churches run donation events for us for socks and underwear. We're hoping to continue to expand and do welcome back bashes just like the others two do, but right now we're kind of focused in this area.
They do a good job screening the clothes too. Like, we'll get donated, some lovely person will donate something, we're like, oh, no kid is gonna show up to school in that, so we're gonna screen that out. So there's good things there that kids are gonna want too.
Yeah, we're currently using all of our interns to go through the and sort through to make sure we have the best of the best.
I just want to thank the Community Foundation for hosting events like this, because I think that there needs education with the population that we're talking about. I think Jonathan mentioned earlier having voices who are experiencing homelessness educated is really great. Hopefully we can help with some of that as well. This is not the guy that's standing at the sign in the median panhandling for money. The vast majority of the families we're talking about, both members of the household, sometimes the children, are working full-time jobs to make ends meet. These are hardworking folks who just have sometimes co-occurring issues that create all kinds of barriers, whether it's credit issues, to substance abuse issues, to mental health issues. I mean, there's a variety of different things that are going on, but very, very few folks I've talked to are not hardworking, employed folks.
And I believe that it holds true with the mission as well. Most of the people that can work that are at the mission are working. So that's definitely something that we need.
Well, so many questions.
I remember hearing a radio program that talked about school administrators several years ago. So one of the things he did was provide laundry facilities for the students. It's great that they get the clothes, but they're very concerned about looking clean. And that may include showers too, I don't know, depending on where people are housed. Do you have enough of a need for that, even though a lot of your students are in hotels or doubling up? Still, that may not be affordable.
We have laundry stuff at the schools, right? So at the middle school in particular, we have 2 places that we can do laundry. And so oftentimes what we'll do is, if that's a concern that a family has shared with us, we will have an extra set of clothes that's clean for the kids to put on when they get to school, and they change discreetly, and then we'll wash their laundry, and then they can take that home, and we just have like a cycle of having laundry available for them.
I always learn so much at these lunch and learns, and I love having those moments where I hit myself up the side of the head and say, why didn't I think of that? A lot of work has been put into creating these guides to help families in need navigate resources, but some of the questions that were posed made me think, why haven't we thought about having a guide for people who want to help, know who are the helpers, and how they can support them, because they may not know about Hero or the Bread Basket or other things like that. And I think that would be something that we could very easily do to give community members guidance. If they want to help, here are the many different ways you can do that.
I think the hard part is they change so frequently. A lot of those organizations are long-standing, but like I gave the example, I kept saying, oh, well, if you show up on Tuesday here, and they're like, that's not in there anymore. It's now Thursday at this place, and keeping on top of that, because that's a lot of hard-earned knowledge that our families have, and making sure that we keep up with that. So it is a struggle for sure.
use a lot of intern power on that every year, is going through and updating our resource guides, because that's what we send out to families at the end of the year, like, hey, here are some places you can reach out to if you have needs and can't get us.
I see you, but I have a question now. So when my kids went through city schools, they would come home sometimes and share concerns. And often I did not know where to take that information. And so I would contact the people that I know, which is not necessarily, I'd be the principal. I don't know if that's who I'm supposed to contact. So it would be interesting to me, how is that information shared with families when your child comes home and has a concern about a student? How do I get that information to the correct place? Because I didn't know, and I feel like I should have.
I think that's what's so beneficial about having us in the building as well, is that as school social workers, we're a wealth of knowledge. And so it's been really nice. My people know, and so it doesn't matter if the registrar gets it, or if the attendance secretary gets it, or if the custodian gets it, or it comes to an administrator, they know who in Waynesboro to contact.
So
anyone would be able to say, I think this information belongs to Sarah, and would reach out to me. And I think it's the same for the rest of the social workers in Waynesboro.
Yeah, Staunton doesn't employ school social workers, but all of our front office folks know if they get a call like that, be the counselor or my office.
And I was gonna, the bread basket, we get people all the time who come by and go, well, how do you make sure you're not feeding somebody who doesn't need it? And that's what I love about, you don't know who needs it. And, especially with school lunches, right? If you're paying somebody, giving food to a kid whose parents could afford it, but they don't want to pay it, you still care about that kid. And so it's so important to not have the stigma that nobody knows who's in what situation. The other one I have to point out is just the irony of McKinney-Vento not paying for housing. Because the only solution that I know, but I get it. It's the most expensive one.
We all know the answer, but we still email Dr. Barber and like, here's the scenario. Can we do this? And I know it's going to be unfortunately no, but I'm still going to send the email and like, help me make this make sense.
The donations that you get are not restricted at. So if someone wanted to donate funds, then you saw everyone wanted to.
And know that I think this applies to all of us, is that we have enough knowledge in this area. Some of us have long-based knowledge with social services and other areas that we would not give funds that could not be, the family could not maintain those types of things. If that were ever given to us, know that we would very diligently follow up on those types of things, because we don't want to set a family up for something temporary. We want them to experience long-term success, and that means that you have to have an income ongoing to be able to pay after we've been able to support the deposit or the first month's rent, those kind of things. So.
Okay, now we really are coming on the time that we're supposed to stop. Do you have any other questions or comments? Got a few more minutes? Did you guys have?
I'll echo what Ryan said. Thanks for having us. A lot of what we talked about is invisible to most people, but it's all around us. And so anything we can do to continue to bring visibility to the issue is really important. So thank you.
Thank you all for being here. I don't know about you guys, but this was really nice. Like, things are going well. You guys are doing a great job. It's a great program. Yay! Yay! Thank you very much. For additional SAW housing updates, I'm not sure. I think just keep an eye on the emails and the newsletters that are coming out pretty regularly. We do have a Facebook page, and there is a website. So we're going to have some more events announcements coming out. The summer is upon us, and so we may not be quite as visible with Lunch and Learn throughout that season, but we will come back. And I believe we'll be looking for some input from y'all in terms of what you would like to learn about and what you would like to see happen with these kinds of events, so we can meet that need as well. Thank you very much. We have a few more minutes, 8 more minutes. If you have any questions in the next 8 minutes, we'll be here. Thank you guys very much.